Please welcome our next guest. He is an artist, he's a creative director, and he's a visionary who has embedded himself as part of this digital art and NFT movement. So please join me in welcoming GMONK on stage. Yeah.
Hey everybody. What's going on? This is going to be a very different speech. This is all about the viz and the sound and how we push the medium forward. Oh, there's my, yeah, this will be helpful. Right on. And if you want to find me on the socials, just at GMONK, gmonk.com, at GMONK on Twitter, Instagram. I'm very friendly. I suppose I'm most well known for designing the holograms in Tron Legacy, which is a science fiction film. Designing user interfaces in Oblivion, another science fiction film, and designing the Windows 10 desktop. Can't escape from this one. Cool thing about this one is it's a real photo of lasers. And so I was like, oh, I mean, if you can do it. So I did a lot of that work, and my kind of main motivation and inspiration is to constantly reinvent myself. Constantly. And the way I do that is I cross-pollinate with different entities. So I was living in Venice Beach doing motion design for a long time, maybe a decade. I moved up to San Francisco to work with the legendary Bot and Dolly, which is a robotics studio, was a robotics studio in San Francisco. And we pioneered some interesting ideas with robotics, motion control cinematography, and projection mapping. And so I stroll into this company, and literally the first project I work on is kind of a revolutionary projection mapping technique where we're projection mapping on moving objects. And so the film, we made a 5-minute kind of technology demo, and it was about the principles of magic, the 5 principles of magic. So this is transformation. So this is all in camera. There's no CG. It's all projected content on the canvas, and our goal was to create depth where there wasn't. These are flat canvases. So there's a camera on a third robot, and we're projecting on this canvas and kind of creating this box. The film is called Box, and it's just all these different iterations of creating the illusion of depth. This is another one. This is Intersection. All shot in the studio. Shot it about 5 times to get it right. It took a while to get it right. We wanted to kind of show it in natural lighting, but also in dark light to kind of create these illusions. So this is these are robot arms holding canvases in different ways, and then we're kind of using the orientation of the canvas to create these illusions of depth. We put our character in the box. So then, after doing that, it's kind of like I'm all about physicality, going from motion design and holograms and AR all into the physicality. So I go on this binge of just being obsessed with light and doing all of this client work with light as my inspiration. So doing light installations, projects for Adobe, putting lights on cars and doing long exposure light paintings, using LED screens instead of projection mapping to do different campaigns. Car commercials with projection mapping, car commercials with CG, but it's all about data as light and these kind of like LiDAR worlds. But this is all commercial work, right? So it's like, okay, well, I want to go into the art scene. And so I team up with VT Pro, which is kind of a experiential production design studio down in Los Angeles, and we do a robot light show. But instead of doing content-based, it's all about volumetric light. It's all about how does light occupy and define a space, the absence and presence of light. And it's basically take these, these gobos, if you will, and with a spotlight inside of it, with different diodes and pixel tape and cob lights, and we make really interesting kind of 5-chapter, 7-minute light performance that debuted at the Day for Night Festival in Houston, Texas. Okay, so, well, sorry, we don't have a lot of time, so we're gonna have to blast through this. So, the NFT space has been really interesting because now there's an opportunity and resource for artists to express outside of brands, outside of client work, and just express what's deepest inside. So what do? I have a confession to make. I really love psychedelics. Hard psychedelics, really hard, legit psychedelics. And the dimethyltryptamines and the ayahuascas and the Sonoran toads and the San Pedros. So what do? I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna go, I have different genres of work, and GMONK is my blatantly psychedelic work. And so I was like, all right, well, my Genesis NFT piece is gonna be about smoking 5-MeO in a crack pipe. And it's called The Divine Molecule. And this is it. It's actually practical cinematography with mirrors and all sorts of stuff. This is how we did it. Collaborated with the Sugar Cubes, the Symmetry Labs, and we put LEDs on all of the edges of the Sugar Cubes, mirrors, security mirrors all up along it, flew a camera through it, and that's how I made that. Here's another look at it, a little different technique, different light source. This was a piece that I minted on a nifty gateway drop called Floating Alone. And for me, coming from motion design and having a foundation in graphic design, I wanted my NFTs to kind of be an unknown, where they all were very vibey, but I didn't want people to understand how they were made, because I wanted to kind of dance on that fine line between practical cinematography, photography, and digital art. So it's like, this could be CG, but it also could be cinematography, which is what it is. But this, I kind of wanted the cinematography to look like CG. And then, apply optics. I call myself a lens-based digital artist because I'm obsessed with glass. I'm obsessed with diopters and prisms and all sorts of glass to augment light and or other textures, refractions, such as that. This is a cloud tank. You have salt water at the bottom, and you pour, kind of different oils and paints and creams in, and it separates. You put a probe LEDs in it, and then of course I have strobe lights on the sides, and it makes this. Kind of dark, but it's kind of like a strobe light cloud voyage. So it's like, I don't know. And then it's kind of like, it's like a minute long, and it kind of like, what I love about cloud, it's called cirrostratus, it's my favorite type of cloud. It's the cloud of ascension. So it's the cloud that I'm obsessed with the afterlife and soul passage and transmigration. It's kind of my vibe. So cirrostratus clouds for me kind of is that passage in our realm. So that's this is another one. This is how it was made. I think it's key to just understand, you look at it and you're like, okay, is that like a Cinema 4D volumetric light or something? It's like, no, it's a spotlight and a perforated tunnel. We've pushed the camera through it. This is what it looks like. And then you can see the diopters at work on the edges to kind of duplicate the image and make it really interesting on the edges. That's why it's kind of a prismatic spotlight, if you will. This is a part of the Floating Alone. So this year, this is what's so exciting about all of this, is that this year for me was just a sketch. This is just for me to kind of figure out my place, my voice in the digital art space. But I want to take that a little bit further and talk about, what can you do with these smart contracts? What can you do? A lot of people are doing really interesting things with the time parameter. So they have pieces that evolve over time. So the piece looks different in the morning than it does at night. And that's really interesting. That's what Beeple did with Human 1 in the box, is he has this guy walking, this astronaut walking, and basically changes per time of day. I was just in a Christie's auction. One of the artists did the same thing, where you enter your latitude and longitude, and in real time, the piece updates based on where you live and what the night and day parameters are, which is pretty cool. It's a pretty interesting thing. It brings me back to my Flash days. I started out using Flash. Does any of you guys, have you guys ever used Flash 20 years ago? So I was really into that. I was really into Flash because I liked the movie clips. I liked the triggered events, the cause and effect. And I see the potential of smart contracts in that way, the cause and effect, right? It's like, okay, I can take this parameter and that can cause this to render your artwork in real time. So this year I was kind of finding my place. I was getting vibes. I was, doing things. My thing this year was all about like doing practical effects that look digital so it can feel like digital art. So this is actually a real hologram. So she's real on the left, and she's basically a prismatic projection on the right by basically bending her through a prism. She's real there. And then we basically are rotating a prism, so she basically bounces all the way over there. So that is actually, this is called Date with a Hologram. So it's fucking vibey. I don't know. It's art, this is, I don't know what to say. It's fucking art. Come on. These are musings. I'm really obsessed with the human form and the elements. This was actually meant to be a 4-story LED installation that was a 20-minute film, and it got canceled because of COVID. So I took the footage that we shot from that and turned it into a 8-piece digital art series. It's all shot on the Phantom. And again, it's really thinking about how to stylize this so it feels digital. It's a weird premise. It's like taking live action and making it feel digital. But I wanted to create these like elemental colossus, these elemental giants. And this is a series called Symbiosis Mythologica. And just beautiful statements on the human form. I also find that aspect ratios really matter in the NFT space. I find that people enjoy looking at things on their iPhone in 4x5s, 3x4s, and 9x16 verticals. So actually my first series out of the gate was vertical. I shot it anamorphic and turned the camera 90 degrees. Here's another one. I love high-speed cinematography and time-lapse because it just takes an ordinary moment and makes it really interesting. It makes it kind of extraordinary. This is literally me putting a bunch of dust and sand on this guy's shoulders and having him do a pirouette, and it just turns into the vibiest thing. So he's lost in time. How much time do I have? How am I doing? Should I just go? Do you want me? Okay. Okay, I'm doing good. All right, cool. So this gal had wielded a fireball. And what I was so interested here is the emissive quality of fire. Love, how many of us love the emissive qualities of fire? So I just was really interested in just fogging the whole place up and just having this vicious kind of smoke cloud and having her fireball light it up in really interesting ways, captured at 1,000 frames a second. This is all part of the same series, Symbiosis Mythologica. Another one. I work with a choreographer in Los Angeles named Kitty McNamee, and her group of dancers, this guy, he's the Haitian Temptation. And this guy, he was just so cool. He was so cool. Look at this one. If you guys can see this, it's a little dark. He's standing on his toes and pirouetting back and basically supporting himself. It's just so cool, the physicality. And then we have a fire bar in the background, a wet floor, just vibing out. Held it for a minute. Crazy. Strong toes. And then, of course, this is called the perfect simulation. This is just, this is like a flamethrower, a bunch of fans, and then you shoot out the flame, it gets caught up by the fans, and then you capture it at 1,000 frames a second to become a fire tornado. And this is real, but I call it the perfect simulation and kind of fake that it was digital. Okay, so that's a body of work that kind of was the early NFT ideas. And then I wanted to really think about the collectors, right? As an artist, you have to think about your collectors. Collectors are everything. Collectors are your support system. They're your friends. They're your collaborators. And I just really wanted to create, I shoot a lot of photography. Photography for me is an escape. I do productions, I do brand work, I do huge projects, calls, photography is an escape for me to just turn off the phone and just put on a backpack and fucking go somewhere. And no one talks to me. And I just make frames and make compositions and pay attention to texture, and it's kind of bliss. It's kind of just like a quiet time to just be alone and refresh. And so to take that into the more psychedelic tropes, there's a type of photography called full spectrum photography. And a camera sensor can see the full spectrum of light. Our human eye can only see the visible spectrum, but a camera can see the full spectrum, so it can pick up the ultraviolet and infrared spectrum of lights. Those go beyond the visible spectrum. So of course, I'm really into this idea that what I see with my eye is completely different than what my camera sees. So when I'm looking through my viewfinder, it's like a portal into this unseen world. And that to me is very psychedelic, because that's like basically I just took 4 hits of acid and started photographing in Alaska. That would actually, maybe not that much. But the full spectrum photography for me is just a way to paint with a new set of colors, a new set of rules. And so this was shot in Alaska, and it's just a new take on landscape photography for me. And so it's just a really interesting way of discovery, because it's like shooting on film, where you go to a place, you shoot on your camera, everything is very flat and kind of ghostly, and basically 2 tones. And then you take it in for post-processing and you pull all the magic out of it in post-processing, because it's all there. You're not doing anything. You're not adding to it. You're just finding it by the use of contrast. And it's like contrast and manipulations of white balance and kind of remapping blocks of tones. It's very graphic. It's very fun for me because it's very graphic. And it's all about the relationships between the positive and negative space in their tonal relationships. And so this is all from Iceland, and this is from Hawaii. So this was a big drop on Nifty Gateway, and I sold 16 one-of-ones, and I made a box set. I collaborated with the graphic design legend Michael Cina, who's my favorite graphic designer in the world. We're really good friends, and we made a really beautiful box set. So the owners of the 16 one-of-ones get this box set of all the pieces and kind of a story of the entire experience shooting these 3 locations: Iceland, Hawaii, and Alaska. And then I wanted to take that a step further and get into time-lapse, in full spectrum time-lapse. So what I love about time-lapse is that this is actually in Mount Tam. I love Mount Tam. Mount Tam fans? Yeah, best, fucking best. And so this was actually really hard to figure out, because full spectrum, it's just like the light reaching the sensor in the infrared spectrum isn't 100% consistent sometimes. And so just figuring out how to do time-lapse with it took me a long time to figure out the right lens. That's my wife. We're in Lake Tahoe here. And just whenever we go on trips, my poor wife has to, she's a great sport about it, but this is Lake Tahoe, doing the time-lapse, and kind of, the other thing to think about with NFTs is, how do they loop? 2 minutes, okay. How do they loop? I think it's like if you go back to like an X-Copy, you look at X-Copy, who I think is like the perfect NFT artist, because it's like a loop. It's 4 frames, right? And so I'm always thinking about how does my stuff loop? And you have to think about editorially, how does that work? And so sometimes in these, for instance, I kind of rewind them. They kind of rewind and start over. I find that it's kind of cool with live action footage, especially high frame rate stuff, is you can kind of rewind it and kind of speed ramp it into the rewind, and then it starts nicely again. But definitely think about how things rewind. So this is my most recent piece. I just dropped this on Christie's last week, and kind of had an epiphany on this one, because with my graphic design background, I love lasers because they are very graphic. It's like you spend countless hours laying out points on a grid in graphic design. For instance, making those Oblivion interfaces. You spend countless hours just like laying out points and you're connecting them. All like UI is basically like points, lines, small type, big type, infographics, right? And so you spend so much time just connecting lines, and I'm always thinking about bringing that into 3D space, and laser light for me is that. You bring it into 3D space, you connect these points in space, and then they have this energy to them, this emissive quality to them that is just really strong and powerful. So I created this piece called Inside the Reactor, Geometra, and this was an NFT. It's about a minute long, and it's just really dope laser work. it's like with diopters, and it's like, you can kind of hear it. Let me just turn that up, but it's kind of like I wanted to make this machine and have this machine like find its way, and so it's like kind of searching. It's kind of searching for like the right through line, the right pattern, and then it locks into that pattern and connects it, and kind of wanted to have this dramatic display of energy when it does. Okay, I am out of time, but this was at Christie's, and what I'm thinking about now, I just want to go where this all goes. This is first year of NFTs, and I'm thinking about it. I've been in the industry for 20 years. This is important, so let me go over like 2 minutes. Let's go 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Other guy went over like 20 minutes. So I'm thinking about all this, right? I'm putting out this work, and I'm thinking about where does it go next, right? So I think where it goes next is I build these installations as part of the NFTs, right? So I want to sell the installation. So I want to build my next laser installation, and I want to sell that. I want to have that be in someone's art gallery, right, permanently. And they own the NFT to that, and I make the art from it. Right, I'm thinking about these kinds of things. I'm thinking about aspect ratios. I'm thinking about a lot of the things I shoot with anamorphic lenses, right? So they're super widescreen, but I don't think that that's the best format for NFTs. I think, like I said, 3x4s, 4x5s, 9x16s are a nice format. It's kind of the Instagram format, right? It's kind of the Beeple format, 4x5. And so I want to start shooting these things on film. This is a robot laser show we did that I shot on film, and it was just like, fucking, the texture, the patina, the soul that it puts into an image. And plus, film formats are kind of more friendly to those vertical formats. So instead of shooting on an anamorphic lens and then flipping it and have it be very, very tall, I'm thinking about shooting on film and flipping it so it's a little bit more closer to the Instagram format. And then, here's another installation as a projection map sculpture. I'm thinking about sculpture, projection map sculpture. I want to build some of those next year and sell those as NFTs. I want to do more. It's just, as an artist, you're always thinking about the potential. You're thinking about the possibilities, right? You're dreamers. We're dreamers. That's all we do is we dream. It's literally all I do all day is fucking dream. And so it's like this is what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about like, how do I up the ante? How do I make this more of a thing for the collectors to have? Right? I'm always thinking about the physical. That's what Beeple always preaches. Mike is a very good friend of mine. I've known him for 15 years. I talk to him all the time. And it's like the physical nature of NFTs is really important, to give the collectors something, an infinite objects, an installation, a screen, a frame print, and make it individual for people, I think is really important too, to like give them like a certificate of authenticity on the back, give them a link. It's all about, that's what you need to be thinking about as an artist in the NFT space, is the collector base, the collectors themselves, how to kind of reward the collector for investing in your work, and then also just like really push the medium, push the smart contract medium. Get your own smart contract and just really think about, how can I push time parameters? How can I have this piece evolve? Is it just one piece that just happens once in time, or is it a piece that's live and it evolves? With me, I'm thinking about live action, and I'm thinking about, okay, I have these bodies of footage. Like, let's say I build something, for a new piece. I have this body of footage, and I could shoot it in different lighting scenarios. I could shoot it in different times a day, and I could input that into the time parameter, make it live. These artworks can be living artworks. This is kind of what separates it from traditional artwork, is it's alive. It's tied to the blockchain. The blockchain is alive. This artwork lives, so that's where it can get really interesting. And I think this is, yeah, that's it. Okay. So if anyone wants to contact me, I'm GMONK at GMONK anywhere. Thanks for listening. All right.